So today we'll be covering just briefly about Clean Cities, Georgia. We'll talk about EV myths and basics, as well as some more specifics on electric vehicles and the infrastructure that helps support them. You'll see some video testimonials from actual EV owners, and then we'll go over some resources to help you in the future, as well as do our Q&A. So a little bit about Clean Cities, Georgia. We are part of a Clean Cities Coalition network funded by the Department of Energy's Vehicle Technology Office. So we support all types of alternative fuels. That includes propane, renewable propane, natural gas, renewable natural gas, electric, ethanol, biodiesel, and more. We serve here as a coordinating point for any alternative fuel vehicle activities and infrastructure organization here within the state of Georgia. There are nearly 100 coalitions nationwide. So as you can see on this map, there are some areas that cover the state, some areas that cover just a region. For example, in Tennessee and Florida, they'll cover certain regions of the state. Here in Georgia, we do cover the entire state. One of the programs that we're working on that this is a part of is Drive Electric Georgia, which is part of a multi-state grant called Drive EVs USA, and it's focused on education and outreach in a variety of priority areas. Consumer education, what we're doing like with this webinar today. We also are working with EV clubs throughout Georgia, so if you're interested in something like that. We work with utilities, helping to plan for infrastructure, educate government officials, and then also work to educate dealerships and work with fleets. So we'll be putting the link in the chat for Drive Electric Georgia. On there, as I mentioned, we've got listed the EV chapters, as well as some of our other upcoming webinars and events that you may be interested in. And with that, I'll turn it over to Frank to talk about some EV myths.
Thank you, Sumner. So just a little bit about me. I'm executive director, but at Clean Cities, but I am an EV owner since 2013 here in Atlanta. North Fulton. I took advantage. I dipped my toe in when Georgia had the state income tax credit. I saw people driving a bunch of Nissan Leafs where I worked. I saw them in the garage. I looked into that, and I thought, you know what? Now's a time to try this EV out. I had been looking for some time and thinking about it, because the vehicle that I was using when we relocated to Atlanta was a F-350 diesel, or my wife's car, and that was just not conducive to doing business in the city of Atlanta, as you can imagine. So, and I've owned Nissan Leafs, and our family has used at one time. We've had 5 different Nissan Leafs, and so I'm at the 2019 with extended range, 225-mile range. So my common myths, the things that I had to work from, this is all my perspective, and you know, being around EVs and talking to folks and being a part of the EV Club of the South and just my role at Clean Cities. You know, my experience is my experience. Yours is going to be different. If you don't own an EV, then maybe there's some things I'm sharing with you that'll be helpful. If you do own an EV, you might be contrary. Your experience might be contrary to mine, but here's my experience. First off, I charge at home. So 2013, I leased my first car. I installed a charger. I did it myself. I did a little bit of research, felt like I was handy enough. And of course, I turned off all the power, and you know, and here I am today. I lived through installing my charger, and it's working flawlessly, and no harm to my cars. I did it right. I did my research. You might look at doing that. You might not want to do that. You might want to hire an electrician to do that. But to address the first thing, takes forever to charge. I don't think it takes forever to charge. Now, if I was doing a wall outlet, the 110, yeah, it might take a longer time to charge if I was in a hurry. But the fact that I charge at home, it's convenient. Now, with my first Leaf that had the 95-mile range, and I was driving 35 miles to into the city, and you know, so round trip 70 miles. And if it was cold, I would definitely charge when I was downtown. And if I was going to different meetings, I would be on the lookout for where I could charge. So I don't think it takes forever to charge. And we can go through that more specifically about the different rates in a following slide. Until I had an EV, I wasn't aware of all the chargers that are around me. And when you start looking and you start recognizing the green signs, and the pedestals in parking lots, you'll become attuned to the fact that there is charging available. You have charging in parking garages, in shopping malls, grocery stores, in city garages, on the in Atlanta you have it next to the Atlanta City garage has parking. They have on-street charging. The airport has charging. There are vendors that where you park off property from the airport, you can charge your car while you're gone. It's 110, but it doesn't really matter. And I did a lot of flying, so I took advantage of that and specifically used that one vendor to plug my car in. EVs don't go far enough. For what I was doing for my work here in Atlanta, they absolutely went far enough. Were there times when I had to specifically make sure that I charged to get home? Yes. But I equate that to driving my truck or our SUV, on a with only 1/8 of a tank of gas remaining. At some point, I was going to have to make that decision that I needed to get more gas. Was it practical for my lifestyle? It was. It is today, because I'm still doing similar work in traveling from North Fulton into the city and going to different meetings. Did we still maintain our ownership of an ICE vehicle? So when we took longer trips, I would never have attempted to take a long trip with my first 2013 version. But Sumner and I took a trip yesterday to Macon in my car that, the stated range is 225 miles. And we did that specifically for an upcoming webinar. And it worked. We worked in planning to charge in Macon, and we did. We grabbed some lunch. We took a call. So I think it could be practical. You just need to think about what is your most common travel path and need for commuting. EVs are city cars. Yes, they are city cars. Are they meant for rural areas? I don't know. I don't live in a rural area. But if you lived in a rural area and your commute was still 30 or 40 miles on a regular basis, then I don't see why it wouldn't work. Does your employer have charging stations? And my employer did. My employer had multiple garages located around the city, and both locations had charging. Did I have to take my turn at charging? Sometimes I did. The last myth, replacing battery makes the cost of an EV too high. I don't know about that. I haven't owned my cars long enough to have the battery switched out. Some of you may have owned the same, as an example, the same Nissan Leaf, and you saw some battery degradation in that. If you had a 2013, maybe it's not getting 95 miles range, maybe it's only getting 75 or 80. I don't know that that's a reason to replace that battery, and there's definitely a market for used vehicles. So I can't answer that myth about battery replacement. I mean, I think most of the manufacturers are warrantying their batteries for 8 to 10 years. So that's just my response to those common myths. You might have a different experience. Frank,
we also had a question come up about the income tax credit and the alternative fuel tag fee. So for the $213 that are paid annually, the question was, is there political pressure to reverse this?
Well, I spend a lot of time at the Capitol, so I know that is an issue. Probably won't be dealt with this year. It might be dealt with next year in a more comprehensive freight logistics total transportation plan. So I've been told. But I think people recognize that it probably needs to be adjusted.
Yep.
Okay. Next slide.
Right.
I think that's you, Summer.
Yes. So we just want to go over some electric drive basics. So for those of you who aren't familiar with the differences, there are the electric vehicles that are all electric, run by an electric motor, and don't have the transmission, don't have the oil change that you need to usually do for the combustion engine vehicles. They use charging infrastructure to charge the battery directly. So that's the all electric vehicle. Then there's the plug-in hybrid electric vehicle, where you have your electric motor, but you've also got a combustion engine. And so you charge it with the wall outlet, but you also have the combustion engine to come in when the battery runs down to help continue to fuel the vehicle. That's more like a Chevy Volt. Then you've got the hybrid electric vehicles, which are, they have an engine, they have an electric motor, but you can't charge it with a plug. And it runs more on the regenerative braking in order to fuel the battery. So that's more like the Prius. So as we think about electricity as a source and a fuel, we want to think about where it comes from. Here in Georgia, it has become increasingly greener over the last 4 or 5 years. So instead of coal making up 40% of the energy source for electricity, where it was 4 or 5 years ago, now it's only making up about 15%. So we have other sources coming in like natural gas, solar, hydrogen, and nuclear to help maintain that portfolio of fuel sources for the electricity. And what that does for us is it helps not only make the fuel source cleaner and greener as time goes on, but it also helps with the fuel cost. So to charge your electric vehicle at home costs mere cents. As we're seeing right now with gas prices, with what happens in the world can change how much the gas prices fluctuate. So that's one of the benefits about an electric vehicle, is that you do have increased energy security and lower fuel costs. You also have improved fuel economy. So if you weren't in it for the green reasons of the reduced emissions, those would be some other great reasons for you to want to switch to an EV. But if we do look at the reduced emissions, you can see in this chart here, a gas vehicle per year emits about 11,000 pounds of CO2 equivalent. And a electric vehicle emits more, about 4,000. So that's about 7,000 pound CO2 equivalent difference per vehicle per year. So when you think about starting to add that up in terms of how many cars we have on the road in Metro Atlanta and Georgia, that can be pretty significant. Some of the other considerations to keep in mind, Frank mentioned some of these. One of them is that there is a higher initial vehicle cost right now for an electric vehicle. You know, there's a lot of manufacturers that are working really hard to make all the EV parts and come together so that it's cheaper and more affordable, but right now the vehicles are a little bit more pricey. The infrastructure availability is something to take into consideration. So a couple of years ago, the infrastructure was much less widely available. It's better now, and it's getting increasingly better through time, especially with the bipartisan infrastructure bill that's going to be giving us a lot of funding to do additional infrastructure here in the States and close to the highways. So I'll let Frank talk a little bit more in depth about the vehicles themselves.
Let me get off of mute there. So my experience is I have a level 2 charger installed in my garage, and I plug in, you know, when I get home. My EMC does not offer an off-peak rate pricing. So it, you know, I can charge at 5 p.m. or I can charge at 11 p.m. or 1 a.m. There's no benefit from a rate perspective. But we know that the battery stores the electrical energy that powers the motor. You know, I think of this, and as I was demonstrating with Sumner yesterday in our ride down to Macon, if I go 55 miles an hour, I'm going to get more range out of my vehicle than if I'm going 80 miles an hour. And I guess that would be no different if you think about an ICE vehicle. If you're, you know, nice cruise setting at 62 miles an hour versus 82 miles an hour, you're going to use more energy. If you think about, and people look at this whole perspective and say, well, okay, you've got to look from well to wheels on the electricity generation, and Sumner mentioned that, and how we've seen a change in Georgia on the mix of energy production, and natural gas playing more of a role, as well as other renewables. You know, you've got to look at that whole perspective of where's my energy coming from, if you're inclined to do that. And there are websites to help you do that based on your location, based on what your driving habits are and how many miles you drive and stuff like that, and the ICE vehicle that you're comparing to. And I'm saying that because somebody asked about how much they're paying for fuel and how much it costs to charge a vehicle overnight. That really depends on the time of day usage and where you're charging at. Are you charging at home? Do you have to charge and pay a little bit more when you're out during the day and you're using, you know, as an example, one vendor, ChargePoint. If you're using ChargePoint, are you paying a dollar an hour, $1.50 an hour, and you're only picking up 8 to 10 miles? Just it kind of depends on your situation. So I can't answer what is typical, but there are websites, and Sumner's going to post one of them to help you with the alternative fuel. AFDC site will help you to figure that out. So before this call, I very quickly, and if you're doing your research on this, you could do this, in 5 to 10 minutes, not even that. I just went through and Googled, best EVs and ranges, and quickly had 18 different car models come up, from the Hyundai, the Polestar, the Mach-E, Kia, Model 3, Model Y, the Lightning, Leaf, Bolt, ID4 is just some examples. All of those are showing mileage anywhere from 150, which is the Leaf, all the way up to 358 miles, which is the Model 3. So we know that driving range is I don't know of one that's over 400 yet. Maybe somebody does, but we might be exaggerating a little bit on that. Or if there was a car that's 400 plus, maybe somebody could put that in the chat. But certainly in the 250 to 330 range, 300 range is certainly more common now. Next slide. So the batteries, I think we all understand how they're storing the energy, different battery packs. You see car manufacturers trying to make the skateboard platform where they can use that platform for different models of vehicles, which would hopefully reduce the production costs on EVs. But they are, for the most part, using lithium-ion batteries. But if you pay attention to this industry, you'll notice that there are different battery technologies. People are absolutely trying to come up with the better wheel here, if you will, on battery technology. So that continues to evolve and change, and that's why we're seeing cars now that they're saying 330, 358, 280 miles range. And the cost of replacement, it's in my perspective, it's just not an issue right now, because I don't hold onto the cars that long. I mean, 4 or 5 years maybe, but and maybe that becomes an issue if you had a car. I know that some folks are probably on here that are EV enthusiasts, and they've had cars for maybe upwards of 8, 9, 10 years. Next slide. So the battery recycling, that's an issue for some people. They're concerned about the environment. They're concerned about these rare earth metals and where are they coming from, and what is the duty cycle of those batteries and the life cycle, and what can we use those for later in life when they're no longer getting me the mileage range that I needed for my car. They're here in Georgia. We know that Battery Resources recently did an announcement that they're going to be a recycling facility for lithium-ion batteries and pulling out those rare earth metals. There's a company in Florida that's doing it already. If you think about a second life for the batteries, what about battery energy storage at your home? There are some folks involved in the EV Club of the South, and here's my pitch for them. If you're not involved, and if you do own an EV, you're thinking about it, join EV Club of the South or join the Tesla Club Owners, because you have like-minded people that have been in this industry, been involved in EVs for a long time, and they're doing cool things. And they talk about regenerative or recharging back to their home and using their battery pack, or using a battery pack that they've installed at home, or solar power that they're using to charge their car. I mean, it's just great conversations. I've met a lot of these folks belonging to the EV Club of the South, and they have helped us, and the Tesla Club Owners, they have helped us when we have had EV car shows. We did 3 last year on behalf of Clean Cities, Georgia. Next slide. So here's just some information on charging, the different types of chargers. You might hear level 1, the 120 outlet, wall outlet, level 2, DC fast charging, and wireless. So my experience is level 1. I experienced all of them, level 1, 2, and DC fast charging. Before, there were some places when I would park down in the garage for the city of Atlanta that they had a wall of 120 outlets, and I would use that. And I've used the 120 outlets at Hartsfield-Jackson Airport. And I've used those at, I mentioned one of the off-property parking vendors. It's Peachy Parking. I don't think they'll mind me putting in a plug for them. But Peachy Parking has 120 or 120 volt, but 110 outlet accessible. And you don't pay any more. You just pay for the fact that you're inside versus outside parking. The level 2 charging that I do at home and typically would do at different outlets, it gives you that, you can see that 10 to 30 miles of range per hour of charging, depending. And then the DC fast charging, we plugged into Georgia Power 62.5 kilowatt charger that gave us about 80 miles range in 40 minutes, maybe, if I'm remembering that right. Yesterday, it cost me about $10. Very nice to have that. Georgia Power is one of the many companies that has installed DC fast charging across the state. And of course, they have a website and you can find those just as ChargePoint does and others. So I've not had the experience with the wireless charging yet, so I can't tell you about that. Maybe some folks can put something in the chat about that. But you know where this is headed is, can you drive down an interstate and have your EV charged while you're driving over a particular lane that has wireless charging? Or can you drive through a parking lot that has wireless charging? Or can you pull into a stall that will have wireless charging? Those are that is some of the technology that we are seeing and being introduced to. Next slide. So connectors and plugs. My Nissan Leaf, the first one I got, I had to pay extra so that I could use DC fast charging. It was a different, it wasn't just common to have that port on the vehicle, but I don't recall paying extra for the last one that I've leased. But level 1, level 2, and then the much larger, if you're looking at the picture, the DC fast charging, the CHAdeMO that you'll hear about, that much larger cord and plug, and is available at the DC fast charging. Here's a note. You don't need and this was a meme that was floating around. You don't need to hold on to the charger once you plug it into your car. You can plug it in and walk away. It's not like holding the gas pump that doesn't have the catch to keep the gas funneling while you're there at the station. But connectors and plugs, they're different. The different manufacturers. And I know that Alan Shedd's on the call. He might want to add some comment about this, where the industry is going. He's more involved in the industry than I am, I think, just from a personal perspective, but where the industry is heading to uniformity with connectors and plugs, so that you don't have, you got to worry about, well, can I charge my car because it's different? Obviously, Tesla, they have their supercharger station, but there are adapters where you can plug your Tesla into different chargers that are not Tesla specific charging stations. So, and there are lots of folks, and there are Facebook chat rooms and so forth that can help you with that as you're doing your research. Next slide.
Frank, we did have a question. Do you have to have different accounts with each of the different types of charging stations?
You do right now. There's some push among, there's some vendors that would like to own that space where it's just a card and it works on any different charger. Like for the longest time, I've carried around the hard little plastic card to use at ChargePoint station. Yet I just switched to the app yesterday, and so now it's on my phone. And there are other apps that you can load to your phone, but depending, yes, the answer is yes, is you might have to carry around multiple apps right now to be able to use the different chargers, and have to fund those as well, like we do with, funding different, if you're going to buy a cup of coffee and stuff like that. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Extreme fast charging. So with the rollout of the IIJA, which is the infrastructure, my goodness, IIJA, infrastructure, it's the new highway bill. Someone will help me with that. I'm drawing a blank on IIJA.
Infrastructure Investments and Jobs Act.
And there you go. Thank you, Sumner. And a portion of that is focused on electric charging, and the acronym is NEVI. As you will see, growing or building out the national infrastructure for charging. The federal government has said, you know what, we want to see higher output. And so what they're connecting the funds to, if you're going to use it to build out your EV charging network infrastructure, you have to do it at higher rates. And the requirements are just a couple things, is that you would have to have at least 4 ports, 4 people could charge at the same time. And they would have to have a minimum of 150 kW per port. And what we charged on yesterday was 62.5. So I imagine, obviously, charging my Nissan Leaf, it would be significantly faster. And you know, the day that we get to providing up to 200 miles of range in less than 10 minutes, seems like that's more like going to what we've all grown up with, to a gas station and being able to pump gas for 10 minutes and get 400 miles of range in your ICE vehicle. So we're not there yet with ICE, with EVs, but it's coming. But is that really a reason not to get into an EV? I think that's what you have to evaluate. And I would argue probably isn't, unless you're constantly taking long road trips and someone said to me, look, I can't drive over 200 miles before I have to get out of the car. So, you just have to plan for those longer trips. It's just that we're all conditioned of knowing that I can get on the interstate and I'm going to see multiple gas stations, if not at every exit, every other exit, or 8 out of 10 exits. So, next slide. But fast charging, my message is fast charging is coming. Charging at home in the public. I've talked a lot about charging at home. Trust me, it is an expense to buy your own level 2 charger. I get that, but you can spend anywhere from, maybe you're spending $350 to $700, $800 for the device. Depending on how your home is set up, it could be more expensive running power to the inside of your garage with that 30 or 40 amp, or maybe you have to roll it, put it outside, like the top picture shows that car right there is plugged in, and that looks like it's just a 110 outlet, so it's just charging the car overnight. So we won in the collection. I say a group of 32 Clean Cities coalitions won a federal grant to advocate for workplace charging, and it's called Empower. And we'll be working on that, talking to employers and encouraging employers to install more charging in public. And if your employer doesn't have that charging at the workplace, then you should talk to them about it. Apartments offer that as an amenity now, to have some type of EV charging within the parking garage, so that differentiates them from somebody else who doesn't. So, but I mentioned all the places that you can charge in public. Once you start looking, you'll start seeing that there are definitely a lot of places to charge in public. Next slide. So this is just an example of station growth over time from 92 to 2020. And you can see that we're upwards of 40,000 in different alternative fuel charging opportunities and fueling apparatus, if you will. Next slide. And it's just going to continue to grow, and the IIJA is going to encourage that to grow. Sumner, you got this one?
Yeah, so before I talk about the alternative fuel corridors, we did have a question about, what about places where shopping and eating times are around 30 minutes? So that's where, if you're planning your route and you have a DC fast charger available, the charging would be about 20 minutes. So that would fit in with that timeline. Or, say you're done eating already, maybe you want to take a quick walk before you have to hop in the car again. But those are sort of the things that we talk about building into your trip. And we'll talk about in a webinar next week on the 15th for long range trip planning. So speaking of long range trips and interstates, the alternative fuel corridors that we wanted to share with you guys today, these are how our corridors are quote unquote designated currently in Georgia. So all of the green interstates show that there are EV charging stations within 50 miles and of each other, and there are about 5 miles, less than 5 miles from the interstate exit. So that's where things stand right now. And this map is actually fairly built out compared to a lot of other states. So even the small gaps with the corridor pending here off of I-20 and here up north are already being filled in with Georgia Power charging stations that we've just recently been informed of. So there are already more charging stations than a lot of folks realize, but the infrastructure bill that's coming down with the additional funding will be funding for additional EV charging stations that are within, like Frank said, 1 mile of the interstate exit and are even faster. So there's going to be a lot more that comes down in the next couple of years that will make it much easier to do road trips in an EV. So how do you find your charging stations? We've talked about a few options already. There's the Alternative Fuel Data Center, which I provide the link for. I think they have an app as well. There are other apps like ChargePoint, Electrify America, EVgo. EVgo is just for fast charging only. PlugShare and Tesla Network. So these will all show level 2 chargers, which may take maybe like an hour to charge, level DC fast chargers, which can take like 20 to 30 minutes. But here you've got a map of the fast chargers located around in Georgia. And I pulled this from the PlugShare website. So now we're going to actually hear from some EV owners. We've got 4 different video clips to share with y'all of different vehicles and different owners and what they like about their vehicles or what they found that they had to work around. So we'll have Nash talk about his BMW i3, Michael about his Porsche Taycan, William about his Tesla Model Long Range, and Jim about his Ford Mustang Mach-E.
BMW i3. I purchased it off lease, used for a pretty good price. It has all the features, total package. What I enjoy most about it is the free charging. Actually, free miles. I do a lot of interstate driving from time to time. And another benefit is charging at home, where I don't need to run out and find a charging station or a gas station for that matter. It rides, it rides fantastic. Great pickup. No delay when you want acceleration. It's a great car to have. Well, actually, I did take it in to get it worked on about a month ago. Luckily, it's still under warranty. No problems. I wasn't charged a dime. It took about a day for BMW dealer to make the repair of the inverter. It was just a one-off issue. So no different than any other car. Luckily, they gave me a loaner for the day, so everything's fine. No issues.
My name is Michael. This is my 2021 Porsche Taycan. This particular one's a rear-wheel drive one, so it's only starting at about $82,000. I do have the big battery option on this, so I do have the 93 kilowatt hour battery. I'm seeing about 270 miles of range. I've had this about 2 months, so I've already actually had about 4,000 miles on the car already. I've taken it up to road trips to Indianapolis. I've done road trips over to Birmingham, Alabama. It's done great on the road trips. Stopped at all the EA charge, Electrify America. This one has the 3 years of free charging, so I didn't have to pay a penny. I just plugged in, plug-in charge worked. Got the 30-minute free session, and then I was back on the road. Yeah, I've been loving it. I've been driving in the mountains. I've been having fun with it. I've done road trips. So, in terms of charging, this one does have the DC fast charging on the passenger side and the power charge port covers. This charge is up to 270 kilowatts. Just last week, I actually got a very fast charge session. I did see the 270 kilowatts. I went from 5 to 80% in just 19 and a half minutes, which beat even the advertised 22 and a half minutes. It was incredible. So this certainly has the capability to fast charge. Of course, at home, I can just do a level 2 slow charge and everything. Most of the time, just a couple hours overnight is already enough to charge it up. But yeah.
Hi, I'm William Linton. I have a Tesla Model 3 long range. There are different features that I continue to get via software updates that allow me to just, I don't know, just love my car every day. So for example, in just this recent update, we were able to get a beta button. And with that beta button also came with kind of like a score simulator for how we drive. And it'll allow us to kind of be scored on different measures such as for collision warnings, how closely we follow people, how hard we brake, and also kind of how much autopilot is disengaged. And so for me, that kind of got me excited to get out and drive more, just to see how well Tesla would score me on driving. So that's one of the many features that just kind of like always comes in software updates and just always gets me excited to get out and drive in my car. So I really appreciate that, what Tesla offers, specifically with software updates. Another nice feature that I love is being able to just charge. There's so many different supercharging places around the US that it's just very, very convenient. So whenever you're on a road trip, you're able to kind of like put in the navigation. Say I wanted to go to Houston, Texas. I'll put in Houston and it'll tell me via the navigation system what different supercharging stops that I need to make and how long I need to make it there. So that's also another benefit to me because it also allows me to plan out my drives before I'm actually, starting to drive. So the night before I drive, I'll usually kind of, plan out where I need to stop and how long I need to stop. And that allows me to know what time I need to get on the road to be able to get to my destination on time. So like I said, it's just so many different features that like Tesla offers in the Model 3 that I just love. One last feature is here, it also includes a toy box. So you're able to do a boombox, you're able to do a romance kind of like feature where if you have a date here, it'll bring up like a fireplace and have fire crackling, and it's just very romantic here. And also they have an entertainment center, so you're able to watch Netflix, Hulu, Disney Plus, YouTube, and all the kind of like different streaming services that everyone loves. So like I said, Tesla, it just offers a lot of different kind of like perks to their cars. So I love it, and I implore you to try it. So.
Hello, I'm Jim, and I'm sitting in my brand new Mustang Mach-E. It's the extended range version and premium. We love it. We've gone on several road trips. It's a great car. It's quick, it's fun, and it's electric. Yeah, this Mach-E is a lot of fun. It has a ride more like a sports car than a soft cruiser car, but it's a lot of fun to drive, a lot of fun to drive on curvy roads. It's an EV, so that's exciting about that. And we've taken it on several road trips already, and it gets about 230, 240 miles between fast charging stops. So when we're hopping down the road up to Virginia or over to Hilton Head or Charleston, but it's a great fun. Our dogs love to travel with us, so we love it. We chose the Mach-E. We looked at several cars. We absolutely wanted to have an electric car, but putting it all together, the look, the styling, we think it's a little sexier, a little cooler looking. And so putting it all together, we chose the Mach-E and haven't regretted it 1 minute since.
All right, so that was 4 different vehicles that you saw there. And those are more on the mid to higher range of the price range. But if you're interested in some of the more affordable vehicle options, those will also be shown at our April 5th webinar, which I'll put again in the chat link in just a moment. So Frank, you want to tell us a little bit about the maintenance and safety?
Thank you, Sumner. If you don't recognize that picture, that's a Nissan Leaf. And that looks like it's a not a 2018 model, if you will. But maintenance and safety. So from the maintenance perspective, you need to rotate the tires. I need to get my car in to rotate the tires. You need to look, the things that we've all grown up in, if you've grown up with an ICE vehicle, you know, the things that you need to check the oil, check the fluids. No, you don't need to check the oil on an electric vehicle, but you should check the fluids. And I say that because you do have cooling fluids that you need to make sure are topped off or at that optimal level. If I take my Nissan into the dealer, they're going to, you know, when I ask them to rotate the tires, inevitably they're going to say they need to replace the cabin air filter. And that's basically the maintenance that I've had. I park inside, so I don't have the sun damage on my windshield wipers as much, but windshield wipers obviously need to be switched out. It's just, there's very little maintenance on an electric vehicle, and it's easy to forget that you need to pop the hood and maybe check your fluids once in a while. I haven't had any warning lights come on, so other than, you know, air pressure for the tires. So it's very minimal on maintenance. And you know, you probably heard all those stories that you save on, you know, oil changes and transmission oil and fluids and stuff like that. So brake wear, never got to a point where I've had to replace brakes. And obviously with regenerative braking, that's helping to put energy back into the vehicle. But never, I don't know, you know, and having this car I've had for 3 years now, I would be totally shocked if, you know, the brakes didn't look almost, you know, 80% to original. Safety features, unique from the Leaf that I had it was a 2015, and then I got the 2019, my car insurance went down. And when I inquired about that, the newer model had more safety features. And so they rated it a safer car. So you've got lane departure and forward collision and reverse collision and lane, you know, the mirror sign, you know, the beeps going off if you're changing lane and somebody's in your blind spot. I backed out of a spot and didn't realize there was a little parking sign behind me, and my car abruptly came to a stop. And then I looked and said, oh, it saved me from running over that sign. So the safety features are great in electric vehicles, just as they are in ICE vehicles, but they're certainly there. And the forward collision is saved me. I should be I'm an evangelist, thank you, for the fact that forward collision has saved me more than once in stop and go traffic in Atlanta. And if you've ever used that, you know what I'm talking about, beeping and letting you know that the car in front of you has come to a stop, and the car thinks if you don't do something different really quick, you're gonna hit it, you're gonna collide, but then the automatic braking takes over. So the safety features are great. That doesn't mean that your ICE vehicle doesn't have the same type of safety features. It just means that electric vehicles are safe. And then the person who mentioned the updates over Tesla over the airways is, you know, those updates can be safety related as well. So next slide. And I think that's you, Sumner, and you've got the AFDC site to be able to help with cost comparison. Somebody was asking about charging and all that. Here's where you can really get down to cost comparison of what you're driving and what your driving habits are.
Yeah, so I ran this little simulation as an example. So I did it with a 2021 Ford Mustang Mach-E and then a 2021 Ford Explorer. So you can see the price difference there, but that also isn't taking into account there is a federal tax credit that can be up to $7,500 for an electric vehicle. So that will also take the price down significantly. So in comparing these two different vehicles, you can see on the chart that there's different costs to the fuel versus the electric versus gasoline, also as well as the operating costs. So when you kind of look at it on an annual basis for an EV versus a gas vehicle that's newer, then you can see that the electric vehicle's maintenance is about overall fuel and operating cost is about $2,500 per year, and a gas vehicle is more like around 4,000. So if you add that up annually, that can be some pretty significant savings. And if you want to run your own calculations comparing two other different types of vehicles, then that tool is available for anyone to use. So if you are interested in getting an EV, one of the things you can run into is you go to a dealership and you find no one who knows much about EVs. So we're working with Georgia Automobile Dealers Association for this Georgia Charge program, so that you can go onto their website and look up, in your area and see what EV or what dealers are focusing on EVs and are working to have educated sales folks that can help answer your questions. So I'll put this link in the chat as well. That's a great resource for you if you're interested in learning more, as well as if you're interested. Oh, go ahead, Frank.
I'm sorry, Sumner, but and my experience is leasing 5 different vehicles over, since 2013, dealing with 3 or 4 different sales folks. Not one of them was an EV driver. Now they would be glad to lease it to me, and they knew enough to talk to me about it, but you couldn't talk to them about home charging and range anxiety and the fact that, there's probably more chargers out there than you realize. You just need to, you need to look for them, and different websites and stuff like that. They knew the car, but they weren't EV drivers. And so that's just my experience. Maybe there are more sales folks right now driving EVs and that can talk to you about that personal experience.
Another way you can find out is we will be hosting a EV car show on April 23rd in Dawsonville with a few different other partners, and you can come and see the vehicles in person. There'll be some hopefully dealerships as well as electric vehicle owners who will bring their cars there, so you can actually see them in person and ask some questions in a more low pressure type environment. So again, I'll put the Drive Electric link in the chat here, and that's on our events page if you're interested in learning more.
The video, the clips that you saw, that was recorded at our EV car show in the fall of last year at North Point Mall. We had over 80 vehicles. We had a couple of hundred folks walk through, and it was Tesla Club owners and EV Club of the South that brought their vehicles so that people could talk to owners about it and in a more casual, comfortable setting.
Yep, so that's a great opportunity as well. Okay, so as you're considering or thinking about EV vehicles, one of the things you want to ask yourself, we talked about some of the local incentives, federal incentive I mentioned, as well as state incentives. There are some different rebates and things for if you're wanting to get an EV charger at home through the Georgia Power Make Ready program. You want to think about what your driving range needs are, what your typical commute is. And as Frank mentioned, unless you're doing super long road trips, typically it can be easy to have short bursts and then charge either at work or at home. But you do want to think about where you have charging located near you, as well as what level of charging you might need. So for some of these different questions, you can go to the different tools at the Alternative Fuel Data Center base. And you've got the vehicle cost calculator, which is the tool that I showed earlier. That can also show you the emissions reductions for vehicles. And you've got the alternative fuel station locator here, and as well as the laws and incentives search. So a lot of different ways for you to get and gather information if you're interested in making a switch to an EV sometime in the next few years. So with that, we will go ahead and open up to additional questions. Feel free to type your questions into the chat, or if you have something that you'd like to vocalize, you can come off mute so that we can hear your question and answer it for you. So Frank, we've got a question here. This person lives 109 miles from work. Would an electric vehicle work for that, and would the battery last long?
I would say yes. I think there's plenty of models that will get you that distance back and forth to work. And, looking at the warranties on the batteries, if, you're getting a 8 or 10 year warranty, I think you would be, well served. certainly I rattled off just some of the ranges based on some vehicles. The Kona we talked about, 256 to 303 miles. The Polestar up to 270. Thank you for the person that looked up the Lucid. I went back and looked that up, 400 to 520 miles. And I know that these are, maybe more practical is the Kia or the ID4, 245 to 280, but absolutely. And the Bolt, 241, 242 mile range, absolutely. There are cars for that lifestyle. And at $5, or what are we experiencing right now? $4 a gallon in gas, with maybe that continuing to rise.
I was wondering about the cost of the electricity that would charge that vehicle. What you would pay throughout a year versus my drive of that 109 miles one way in gas that I'm going to be putting out, which right now is terrible. That cost of that electricity, I understand, is about half,
or maybe even better than that. And I think depending on who your provider is they're going to have tools for you to assess that. And do they have those off-peak rates that are available to you? So you definitely have to do your research, Mr. Corley, but there are plenty of tools that can help you. And when I installed my charger, my EMC, they wanted to know if I would, they wanted to know that if their customers were doing that. So I had to notify them, other than, it was like a one-page document that I filled out. And so they're aware that, but it didn't change anything for me. So, and when I haven't done this for a long time, but looking at the rates, my electricity bill at home, I've never noticed a significant increase based on my driving habits. Now, granted, the last 2 years have been unique and different, but when it was prior to 2020, I still didn't notice that big of a difference. Now, somebody's put in here and did, what was the comment? I just lost it. And said Georgia Power offers an EV off-peak rate of 1 cent per kilowatt.
So if you're charging overnight, it can be very cheap.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, if I could just add something about the charging rate.
Yeah, please go ahead, Jerry.
I own a 21 volt EV, and for us, this is just our unique experience. We are not commuting every day, and we're only charging on our AC 120 level 1. And before I bought, I checked with a neighbor who has a Leaf, and I said, "Oh, well, let me go ahead and get all of this level 2 set up and charging." And he said, "Don't waste your time, because if you're not commuting and you don't need to do a fast charge overnight to get your commuting miles done, you really don't need that." So for persons who are doing less than, say, a 20 or 30 mile commute, the need for that expense, which is pretty pricey, you really do not need a level 2 charger on that. And so we've done very well with that.
And that's a great point. And it's just, you're in a different situation where you're not a commuter, you're not going someplace every day, and what you do, and the fact that you might, you might get back from your daily runarounds and errands, and you could plug the car in from 4 p.m. until 8 or 9 o'clock when you wanted to do something again. So absolutely, it makes sense. And that's just different experiences.
Right, and the other thing about the charging network, whether it be nationwide or in Georgia, what I would like to see is DC fast charge stations at least every 30 miles for the near term. And my suggestion has been, if Georgia Power wants to get in on this, at least have charging stations at every interstate rest stop. And that would be an ideal situation. Not so much maybe if you compared that with a charging station at Walmart, which is another business is getting in on that very fast. But I would like to see charging stations at least every 30 miles. And as I said, at all of the rest stops. And that would go for nationwide as well.
Yeah, thank you, Jerry. If you are not paying attention to the chat, I'm going to just repeat what Alan Shedd has put. Check with your utilities. Some electric cooperatives offer drive free for a year programs or off-peak rates. There you go. I did not know drive free for a year. Dave, thanks for your comment. Whoa, there's comments flying in here. Oh.
So we did have a question earlier that I just want to make sure gets addressed. The question was, what do dealerships, for example, Chevy, have to do to sell like the Chevy Bolt?
I'm not sure I follow the question. I mean, it's just another vehicle that they can decide to sell, just as they would, any other model. It's just, I think what you might be experiencing right now too, if you're out there looking, is just the supply chain issues are real and impacting that. So I don't know that they have to do anything different to sell the Bolt. Dave Graham, costs about $900 to hire an electrician to run a 240 line from his breaker box where he could conveniently plug in a 32 amp charger included. So there you go. There's, to Jerry's point, it can cost you some money, and Dave's experience based on how far the electrician had to pull the wires and where they were coming from and all that.
And let me add to that too, Frank. I'm fortunate to have actually time of use power billing. I'm in the Chattanooga area, but I live in Georgia. But I get my power from Chattanooga Electric Power, which is a TVA local power company. And so I really capitalize on that, plugging in from like 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. And I'm only charging, I just recently retired, but I was working from home. I'm only charging that car. I've done a cost analysis since I got a Volkswagen ID4 last May. I'm averaging 3 charges in my garage every 2 months. And I'm only paying about $15 a month in my power bill.
There you go. Different experience, right? That's great. And Alan, thanks for, I didn't address this, but I should have, about Jerry, your comment about the rest areas. Currently under federal law, rest stops are prohibited from selling anything. But there is a lot of, within the industry, there's a lot of conversation about that. Why can't we change that? Why can't we have energy providers at rest stops? So, and then it becomes, a whole other issue, but all of this is being looked at, folks. They're having conversations about it. Our experience in Dawsonville, we did the car show in November, but we started having a conversation with them in May because they have a community group, a civic group, help me with the name, Sumner, that, is concerned about the environment, and they wanted to
North Georgia Conservation Coalition.
Yes, thank you. North Georgia Conservation Coalition. The leader reached out to us and said, hey, would you come and talk to our mayor and our county chair about EV charging and about solar and different things like that. So we ended up doing that. So they are going, the downtown Dawsonville area is going to install charging stations if they haven't already, because they recognize that they don't have that. And so, and they've got citizens telling them or asking them, why don't we have this? And so, if you got to keep asking for change to happen.
And Tommy just asked, how long does level 1 charge a vehicle versus level 2?
Well, Jerry does it overnight, a charge per hour, you might be, and anybody else can chime in on this, but I haven't done level 1 for such a long time, but maybe that is.
The average 8 hours?
Yeah, 5 to 8 miles per hour, where level 2, you might get 20 to 25 miles per hour in range.
Yeah, so I think maybe 2 to 3 hours, if I'm not mistaken, for level 2, and like you said, more to 6 to 8 hours for the level 1.
Yeah, depending on what your battery capacities as well. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, if I'm charging a Lucid and I want to get back to 520 and I'm doing it level 1, it's going to take a while.
Yeah, Frank, if I could jump in here just to correct maybe a misunderstanding of what I said, because I don't do a full charge overnight on my car on level 1. It takes me a couple of days to do what I call a trickle charge to get, at least to an 80% thing. So it's much faster with level 2. And the only contradiction I've got when you mentioned the fact that there are no charging stations at rest stops, there is a charging station at the 85 West Welcome Station. And that is the only one, that's the only one I know in the state at this point.
That is the exception, and it is kind of the model of saying, look, the world hasn't come to an end when we did this here. Why can't we do more of that? But you're right, Jerry, there is the Ray.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, folks. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for being here and for sticking with us. We are a few minutes over time, but we appreciate y'all being here and hope you have a great day.
Thanks for the comments, everyone. Appreciate it.